Hey there, everyone. We're going to be talking about a game today. This time we're talking about Cultist Simulator. I don't have it to show you because it's on the PC. I'm not sure if I talked about this before, but I've been playing it a lot recently. And when it first came out, I played it a bunch, but now I've played it a bunch again. So I figured I'd actually talk about it, give my impressions, let people, you know, think about Cultist Simulator a bit. So Cultist Simulator, besides the name being Cultist Simulator, where you what you imagine it would be, it's probably not what you imagine it would be. Cultist Simulator is sort of a tabletop card game in a video game form. So the entire game takes place on a table. Literally in the game, there's a table, and you have like basically cards that you play for certain situations on actions. So you have a bunch of icons for things like talk, work, study, and you'll have like a bunch of extra ones that show up like search, which is like kind of go out into the city type of thing. But then you have temporary ones that show up for certain events and other things happen. But you have like a main group of 4 or 5, and basically you have a character. You start with a certain job. The job is a card usually. You start with a position sometimes. So like it depends on what the position is. So you can start as like something called an aspirant, which is a basically just like a normal dude looking for something. You have a doctor, you have a police officer, maybe he's like an investigator. I'm not sure what the actual title is. And then you have like a dilettante, which is just like some rich person basically. You're basically like a trust fund kid. Um, and what happens is you select one of those and your beginning is different. So you start with different things. So if you're just like the regular schlub, you get um, basically nothing. You start with nothing. Essentially, you can work like a menial job. This is basically all you can do. It's really hard to get more money. It takes a long time to get more money. There's a chance of being injured on the job. Imagine this is like the 1920s. You like have shitty work conditions. Um, then there is the option where you can start as a like working at a company with like a shitty boss who overworks you and constantly demands overtime and cuts your pay for no reason. Um, so it's also hard to make money in that case at first. Then you can start as the rich person and you just like do like a short amount of work and you get a bunch of money for no reason. Um, or you can start as the doctor, which is like steady work. It's like okay paying, and you can kind of like focus on other things. Or you can be the police officer who will, you know, start you. Your job is to investigate things, but all these things like you're probably thinking like what does that have to do with cults? Why is this cultist simulator? Because like your character, no matter what your job is, your goal is to start a cult and obtain like secret knowledge. So you have options here. Like most of the characters start out with some kind of event that happens in their life that exposes them to some kind of secret lore. It's usually like 1 or 2 pieces, like scraps of lore that your character will run into. And as you start searching it, you start figuring out things. You'll start figuring out like different levels of lore. Maybe you'll find like a secret club where like occultists hang out, or you'll find this auction that sells bizarre items, or you'll find a bookstore that sells you know occult books or something. Or sometimes you'll have dreams that'll affect your life. So like sometimes you can dream about some weird occult thing and you become kind of obsessed with it. You can start like once you start learning the occult things, you can start a cult and you can start recruiting followers to join your cult. So that's like the basis of the gameplay. It's just finding more lore, finding followers, and sending them on missions and completing missions. And depending on which position you're in, if you're, you might have investigators searching for you, trying to arrest you. Something from the Suppression Bureau, the Occult Suppression Bureau, and then you'll have rival cults trying to take over your followers or take over your goals. You're like, you have certain areas you can go to send your cult members to. But it's a really interesting way of playing the game because first it has no tutorial. There's no way to figure out how to play the game besides just like hopping in and winging it. And it's a really interesting way of going about it because everything is like opaque. It's not exactly like clear as to what you're supposed to be doing at almost any given point. And I think like it fits the tone of the game in a really interesting way. So why is this interesting? Why is no tutorial good for this game? Is probably something you might be asking yourself. Why do you want to play a game that's like bizarrely opaque, like you can't figure out anything? Because it mimics a situation you would have if you were searching for bizarre occult knowledge. And like it's an interesting parallel because it like immerses you in the game in a way that you normally wouldn't be immersed. So think of things this way. If you, in a real life situation, you came across a scrap of occult knowledge that was like something profound. So think like if you've ever played like Call of Cthulhu, the RPG, not the PS4 game. But if you've ever played it, like you'll find sometimes your characters will find books that have scraps of occult knowledge, and it's like something powerful or something like that reveals like a horror of the universe. And sometimes you'll gain powers from that. You get power, you'll meet some kind of goal for yourself. And what happens is, and this is how the game unfolds, you have a situation where like you get a scrap of knowledge and you get something out of it. And on the same time, when you're playing the game and you figure something out like that, it's the same kind of actual feeling in life. So you figure like, oh, if I do this, I'll consistently get this type of thing. Like you've uncovered a level of this kind of like arcane knowledge that you wouldn't normally have, that you can't just easily get from like looking at a tutorial or figuring something out from like the help list or whatever. There's none of that. So you get like as your character figures things out, as you figure out how to do things with your character, you're figuring it out in real life how to play the game as yourself. And it's an interesting kind of like meta contextual story that's going on between learning to play the game and the character itself learning these bizarre things in the game. So it's immersive in a way that almost everything is not, which makes it kind of genius. It's it's the kind of thing where it would be hard to do that for a lot of games. But because this one is so self-centered, and I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean it in a way that like there's no character on screen. Everything is done through your imagination and the text and the cards. And when you are using the cards, you're playing everything in your head in a way that you want to figure out how this is going to work. How can you do these things with the cards you have? How can you get more cards? How can you get these things to help you? And you have to figure this stuff out all by yourself. But, if you unlock like some form of lore or knowledge in the game, once you start unlocking that stuff, you're kind of like, oh, I kind of get it now. I get how I unlock this now. So you've become a little bit more knowledgeable yourself in the way the game works. It's a really interesting kind of, I don't know, way to overlap the real like learning how to play the game with the concept of the game itself. It's a really interesting game because of that. So, overall, like it has a nice kind of look to it. The music is very atmospheric. It's kind of pulls you in with your with the way it is. It's kind of like feels a little old timey when you're playing it. It feels kind of dark, foreboding, without doing anything. It doesn't like particularly have anything in the game where like just the audio cues for things when things happen and like the kind of eerie background music is like enough to get you into the kind of feeling of how the game should be while you have this, like, you're learning something that's kind of arcane and occult, and also doing in the game, but also in real life. So it's a really interesting experience. It's the kind of thing where, like, you'll play it and you'll be like, okay, I can stop here, but like I could just do one more thing, and then you just like keep doing one more thing, and suddenly you've been playing for like 10 hours. It's the kind of game that like just sucks you right in. And I mean, if you're the kind of person who likes action, this isn't the game for you. If you're the kind of person who likes to enjoy weirdness, or like the kind of ambiance of the strange, I think this game like has that in spades. It's like a really slow kind of plotting, going around by yourself, doing this weird, like engaging in weird situations in the form of cards, I guess. That's the best way to explain it. It's really interesting and really fun to get into. So if you're interested, you should pick it up. It's on GOG. That's where I got it. It's probably on Steam also, I'd assume. But I've been playing that a lot recently, so I just wanted to talk about it for a bit and give you guys a little look at it. Well, I mean, you know what I mean. I'm not showing you anything. I'm just talking about it, but whatever. Anyway, that'll about do it for this. That was a bit about Cultist Simulator, which I would highly recommend. So yeah, catch you guys next time.